Imagine a world balanced on a knife's edge. Two titans stand on opposite sides of the sea. Greece, a land of philosophy and art. To the west, Rome, a city forged in myth and hardened by conflict, built with iron and an unquenchable thirst for conquest. The ancient world was not big enough for both of them. A collision was inevitable. It was a battle for the future of Western civilization. The meeting of these two giants would be a thunderous clash. Greece was the old world. It was a land of breathtaking beauty and intellectual fire. Its hills were dotted with magnificent temples dedicated to powerful gods. Its shores were home to bustling city-states, each with its own identity and pride. This was the home of Pericles, who built the Parthenon. It was the land of Plato and Aristotle, whose ideas still challenge our minds. The Greeks were masters of the sea, skilled traders, and fierce defenders of their freedom. Their culture was a rich tapestry of art, drama, and mythology, a legacy that felt timeless and eternal. Rome, in contrast, was the new world. It was practical, organized, and relentless. While the Greeks debated the nature of the soul, the Romans built roads and aqueducts. While Greek sculptors perfected the human form in marble, Roman engineers perfected the art of war. Rome was a society driven by duty, honor, and the state. Its heroes were not philosophers. They were generals like Scipio Africanus, who had defeated Hannibal. The Roman mindset was simple and powerful: expand or die. Their ambition was not just to exist, but to dominate, to bring order to a chaotic world through conquest. These two powers were like day and night. The Greek world was a collection of proud, independent states. They were often at war with one another. Their strength was in their diversity and creativity, but this was also their greatest weakness. Their constant infighting left them vulnerable. Rome, on the other hand, was a single, unified entity. It learned from its enemies, absorbing their best tactics and technologies. It turned conquered peoples into allies or citizens, swelling its ranks and strengthening its grip. Its unity was its ultimate weapon. Their destinies, though forged in different fires, were intertwined. The Greeks looked east, toward the Persian Empire they had famously defeated. They saw themselves as the defenders of civilization. The Romans looked in every direction. They saw a world ripe for the taking. The Adriatic Sea, which separated Italy from the Greek mainland, was no longer a barrier. It was a bridge. It was the path that would lead these two civilizations to their ultimate confrontation. One would have to fall for the other to rise, and the fate of the world hung in the balance. The first encounters were not on a battlefield, but in the courts of kings. As Rome expanded, it brushed up against the Greek world. Greek cities in southern Italy called for help from King Pyrrhus of Epirus. Pyrrhus brought his elephants and phalanx to Italy and defeated the Romans in several battles, but with heavy losses. This gave us the term Pyrrhic victory. The Romans showed their resilience, replenishing their legions. This conflict, the Pyrrhic War, was the first major clash between the Roman legion and the Greek phalanx. This was the moment the rivalry was truly born. After Pyrrhus withdrew, Rome consolidated its control over Italy. The spark had been lit. The question was no longer if, but when Rome and Greece would fight for control of the Mediterranean. Before Rome, Greece was bathed in golden light, its golden age. Human potential seemed limitless. Imagine Athens in the 5th century BC, humming with new ideas. Here, democracy was born, a beacon of freedom. Pericles championed the arts, building the Parthenon, a symbol of Athens' power. Philosophers like Socrates asked big questions, laying the foundations of Western philosophy. This fueled advances in math, astronomy, and medicine. Playwrights created tragedies, and sculptors carved marble into breathtaking forms. This was Greece's legacy: beauty, reason, and profound humanity. The brilliance of Greece was also proven on the battlefield. The Greeks created the Phalanx, a terrifying wall of men, shields, and spears. Rows of hoplites stood shoulder to shoulder, locking their shields to form an unbroken barrier. From behind this wall they thrust their spears, a forest of deadly points moving as one. This formation depended on unity, discipline, and trust. The Phalanx proved its worth at Marathon, where a small Athenian force crushed a much larger Persian army, saving Greece. It was perfected by military geniuses like Philip II and Alexander the Great, who lengthened the spears. With this, Alexander conquered a vast empire. It seemed no army could break it. Despite its cultural brilliance and military prowess, the Greek world had a fatal flaw. It was not one unified empire. It was a fractured collection of fiercely independent city-states. Athens, Sparta, Thebes, Corinth, each one was its own small nation. They were proud, competitive, and deeply suspicious of one another. They were rivals as often as they were allies. This constant infighting was the great Greek tragedy. While they could unite against a common foe like Persia, they would soon turn on each other once the threat had passed. Their greatest enemy was often themselves. This division led to devastating conflicts. The most famous was the Peloponnesian War. It was a brutal, decades-long struggle between Athens and Sparta. The two leading city-states fought for dominance over the Greek world. The war dragged in nearly every other city. It drained their resources, killed a generation of their young men, and shattered the spirit of their golden age. The war left Greece weak, exhausted, and bitter. The trust between the city-states was broken. They had proven that they could not govern themselves as a single, cohesive power. Even after Alexander the Great united them through conquest, his empire did not last. Upon his early death, his vast territories were torn apart by his own generals. They were known as the Diadochi, or the successors. They carved out their own powerful kingdoms. The Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire in the east, and the Antigonid kingdom in Macedon. These successor states continued the Greek tradition of fighting amongst themselves. They schemed, formed alliances, and waged constant wars against each other for territory and influence. This was the world that Rome would eventually face. Not the unified Greece of the Persian Wars, but a world of powerful, competing kingdoms. These kingdoms were still formidable. They had large armies, immense wealth, and a proud military heritage. But they were looking in the wrong direction. They were obsessed with their own rivalries. They saw each other as the main threat. They failed to see the storm gathering to the west. Their internal conflicts created a power vacuum. It created an opportunity that a disciplined, unified, and ambitious republic like Rome was perfectly positioned to exploit. While Greece prospered across the sea, a new power was rising. On the Tiber River, a small city-state, Rome, was taking shape. Legend says it was founded by twin brothers, Romulus and Remus. Unlike the philosophical cities of Greece, Rome was practical and gritty. Surrounded by hostile neighbors, early Rome was defined by constant warfare. This forged a disciplined and resilient people. A turning point came with the transition to a republic. Power was shared among elected officials and a senate. This fostered civic duty, SPQR, the Senate, and people of Rome. The republic was expansionist, subduing neighbors and growing stronger with each victory. By incorporating conquered peoples, Rome transformed into a formidable Mediterranean power. The engine of Rome's incredible expansion was its army. The Roman legion was a masterpiece of military organization, a force that evolved to become the most dominant fighting machine of the ancient world. Unlike the rigid Greek phalanx, the legion was designed for flexibility. This allowed the Roman army to fight effectively on any terrain. The heart of this war machine was the legionary, a professional, highly trained, superbly equipped, and ruthlessly disciplined. Roman commanders were pragmatists and masters of logistics, engineering, and attrition. They understood that wars were won not just by battles, but by maintaining supply lines. Roman armies were famous for their siegecraft and their methodical, relentless, and terrifyingly effective approach to war. Crucially, Rome had an almost inexhaustible supply of manpower, giving them a strategic advantage few could match. The Roman war machine was built to endure, to learn from its mistakes, and to ultimately achieve total victory. Rome's rise was a tale of internal struggle and political evolution. The Roman Republic was constantly tested by social and political conflict. The most significant was the conflict of the orders between the patricians and plebeians. Through negotiation, the plebeians gradually won more rights and the codification of Roman law in the 12 Tables. This forged a unique political culture based on checks and balances, competition, and respect for tradition and law. The greatest test came from Carthage in the Punic Wars, a fight for control of the western Mediterranean. In the Second Punic War, Rome faced Hannibal, who marched over the Alps and inflicted defeats on the Romans. By surviving Hannibal and defeating Carthage, Rome emerged as the master of the western Mediterranean. The victorious Republic turned its gaze eastward toward the kingdoms of Greece. With Carthage defeated, Rome stood as a titan. Its gaze shifted east, across the Adriatic Sea to the Greek world, a place of wealth, culture, and powerful kingdoms. To the Romans, it was a world of opportunity and potential threats. The sea was now a bridge, a pathway that would lead Roman legions and Greek phalanxes to their first fateful meetings. Consumed by power struggles, the Greek world wasn't paying attention. Into this web of rivalries, Rome stepped cautiously, its initial interest commercial. But where trade goes, conflict often follows. The first contact was as diplomats. They were a curious sight, plain-spoken and direct. The Greeks viewed the Romans as uncultured barbarians. This created a deep-seated suspicion. The first time Roman legions crossed the Adriatic Sea, it was to deal with pirates off the coast of Illyria, modern-day Albania and Croatia. These tribes, led by Queen Teuta, disrupted trade routes. When Roman envoys protested, one was murdered. In 229 BC, Rome launched its first major military expedition across the sea. A fleet carrying 2 legions descended upon the Illyrian coast. By establishing a foothold, Rome was now a direct neighbor to the Greek world, a player in their political game. King Philip V of Macedon watched with growing alarm, seeing Rome's presence as a threat to his authority. The stage was being set for a direct clash between the rising Roman Republic and the established Macedonian kingdom. The spark that ignited the first great war between Rome and a Greek kingdom came from Hannibal. He found a willing partner in Philip V of Macedon, who pledged to attack Rome's territories. For Rome, Philip's alliance was the ultimate betrayal. This act sealed Macedon's fate. Once Rome dealt with Carthage, its wrath would turn eastward. The First Macedonian War was a sideshow for Rome, who fought a proxy war. The war dragged Rome into Greek politics. The Romans now had a taste for intervention in the east. The first encounter was over, but it was clear this was just the beginning. The peace treaty between Rome and Macedon was just a pause before the true storm. Once Carthage was defeated, Rome turned its attention eastward, settling a score with King Philip V. Smaller Greek states appealed to Rome for protection against Philip's expansion. In 200 BC, Rome declared war. The Republic sent its finest legions, commanded by Titus Quinctius Flamininus, to end the Macedonian threat. The Romans systematically pushed Philip's forces out of Greece. Flamininus portrayed Rome as the liberator of the Greeks. In 197 BC, the decisive moment came at Cynoscephalae. Philip marched his army, centering it around his elite Macedonian phalanx. Flamininus met him with his legions, supported by his Greek allies. A thick morning fog covered the landscape, and the two armies stumbled into each other. The battle was a brutal clash of military doctrines. Philip's phalanx charged downhill. The battle for supremacy was hanging by a thread on the misty hills of Cynoscephalae. The Battle of Cynoscephalae pitted the Roman legion against the Macedonian phalanx. The phalanx was an unstoppable wall of spear points on flat ground. Its weakness was its rigidity and inability to adapt to broken terrain. The Roman legion was built for flexibility, divided into smaller independent units. The legionary's gladius was deadlier in close combat than the phalanx's sarissa. At Cynoscephalae, this difference decided the outcome. The phalanx's left wing struggled on the hills, its formation disordered. Roman maniples flowed around the phalanx, attacking its flanks. A Roman tribune wheeled around to attack the rear of Philip's right wing. The formation broke, and the battle was over. The legion had proven its superiority, signaling a tactical revolution. Though defeated, Macedon endured. Decades later, Perseus, son of Philip V, rebuilt Macedon's army, challenging Roman authority. Rome, the Mediterranean superpower, declared war for the third and final time. The Third Macedonian War was a fight to the death. Rome sent Lucius Aemilius Paulus. He cornered Perseus near Pydna. Perseus deployed his phalanx. The Macedonian phalanx advanced, smashing into the Roman legions. But the phalanx line began to fray. Paulus ordered his legions to adapt and infiltrate. Once inside, the legionaries drew their gladius swords. The invincible phalanx was hacked to pieces. The Macedonian army was annihilated. The kingdom of Macedon was extinguished forever. Rome's victory was also a masterpiece of political strategy. After Cynoscephalae, Flamininus did something extraordinary. At the Isthmian Games, a Roman herald announced that all Greeks were to be free. The crowd erupted in ecstatic joy, hailing Flamininus as the liberator of Greece. This was a public relations masterstroke. Rome presented itself as a benevolent protector. Behind this gesture was a calculated strategy. By guaranteeing Greek liberty, Rome became the ultimate arbiter of Greek affairs. It was a brilliant way to control the region without the costs of direct rule. The age of Roman supremacy had begun. The Roman strategy in the East was a classic case of divide et impera, or divide and conquer. The Romans were experts at exploiting the existing rivalries within the Greek world, understanding that the Greeks' greatest weakness was their inability to unite. After defeating Macedon, Rome balanced the power between the various Greek leagues and kingdoms, playing them off against one another. They would support one state against another, then shift their allegiance when it suited their strategic goals, ensuring no single entity could ever become strong enough to challenge Rome. This policy created a climate of constant suspicion and fear. Greek states began to spy on each other, sending reports to Rome about their neighbors' ambitions. Ultimately, this strategy broke the spirit of the Greek world. The vibrant political life of the city-states withered under the shadow of Roman oversight. The Roman Senate became the final authority on all matters. For decades, Rome had ruled Greece through indirect control, but by the middle of the 2nd century BC, Roman patience was wearing thin as the Greek states chafed under Roman authority. It was time to make an example, a final, terrifying statement of Roman power. The flashpoint came in 146 BC when the Achaean League, led by Corinth, rebelled. Corinth was one of the oldest, wealthiest, and most beautiful cities in all of Greece. The Achaean army was no match for the Roman legions. The city was utterly destroyed, its buildings demolished, and its land cursed. The message was unmistakable. This was the price of defiance. There was only Roman rule, absolute and terrifying. The legions triumphed. The phalanx was broken. Greece, once proud and free, fell under the Roman eagle. The sack of Corinth in 146 BC ended a century of conflict. Rome was now master. Yet as Rome conquered Greece, it was transformed from within. The poet Horace wrote, "Captive Greece captured her fierce conqueror." Roman generals returned home with Greek art, tutors, and tastes, eager to appear cultured. Greek language, literature, and philosophy became the new status symbols of Roman elites. Rome absorbed Greek culture on a grand scale, recognizing its prestige and power. In the end, the defeated Greece began a new conquest. The conquest of the Roman mind. Rome built its world with Roman hands, but filled it with a Greek soul. Roman gods merged with Greek ones. Temples adopted Greek columns and styles. Roman literature and philosophy were born in the shadow of Greek masters. Stoicism, Aristotle's logic, and Greek science shaped Roman thought and law. The Romans took Greek ideas and applied them on a massive practical scale. Through Rome, Greek culture spread from Britain to Mesopotamia. Greece lost the war, but its culture won the empire. The Greco-Roman world became the foundation of Western civilization. Greek language carried Christianity. Byzantium preserved Greek learning for centuries. The Renaissance rediscovered ancient texts, sparking revolutions in art and science. Our words, architecture, and even the Olympics echo Greece's legacy. Rome's legions crushed Greece's armies, but not its ideas. The story of Rome's victory is also the story of Greece's survival. The body was Roman, but the soul remained Greek. The struggle between Rome and Greece closed one era and birthed another. The sack of Corinth ended the age of Greek independence. Rome's triumph was absolute. The Mediterranean became a Roman lake. But a new Greco-Roman civilization emerged. Rome provided structure and power. Greece, the spirit and intellect. This fusion created a civilization more influential than either alone. Rome's conquest was not just military, but a profound cultural exchange. The conqueror was shaped by the conquered, building a world we still inherit. The clash of Rome and Greece determined the character of the world to come. The echoes of Rome and Greece shape our world even now. Rome's victory was the triumph of adaptability. Its institutions inspired future republics. The cultural fusion became the bedrock of Western civilization. The Renaissance and Enlightenment revived Greco-Roman ideals. Our laws, architecture, and language are steeped in their legacy. The dilemmas of Plato and Cicero remain relevant today. The past is a living presence, guiding our present and future. Looking back, the story of Rome and Greece is epic and deeply human. It reminds us that unity is power, and even the greatest cultures can fall to division. Rome won militarily, but Greek culture defined the soul of the empire. True influence endures through ideas, not just conquest. The collision of Rome and Greece shaped Western history for millennia. Understanding this story is key to understanding our own world. The tale is unfinished. History's greatest stories are still waiting to be discovered.